Hi, welcome back, beloved pottery friends. Today I'd like to show you step 2 in how to start making pieces of pottery on the wheel. And the wheel may only be one tool in the creation of a piece like this, but it's a very important one because even this piece started off as just a simple curved bowl. And now it's a fancy carved bowl with frogs and lily pads. But it started off as a humble lump of clay. First of all, when you're centering, most of the time you're going to be sitting down at the pottery wheel and you're going to have a foot pedal. But because I do it often and I don't want to hurt my back, I like to throw standing up. And this is the wheel head, and it has 2 pins here, and this is called a bat. And the bat just fits right on top of the wheel head, and that makes it so that when you finish a beautiful piece on the wheel, you can lift it right off without destroying it, most of the time. So, you already learned how to wedge, and we have a nice lump of clay here, and I advise when you're a beginner, start with a lump of clay that's no smaller than 1 of your fists and no larger than 2 of your fists. It's going to make it a lot easier for you to learn how to center. Also, be kind with yourself. Centering is very much like learning how to ride a bicycle. You don't get on the wheel and just immediately start going. It takes a long time to practice, but it can be fun. Make a mess. Screw up. It's okay. A big amoeba-shaped amorphous blob is going to be harder to center. So we take our lump of clay and we make sure the wheel is nice and dry so it sticks. We aim right for the center. This is the fun part. Smack. Turn our wheel on. Now when you're doing pottery, you want to have your wheel moving before your hands touch everything. You never want to be messing with your clay when the wheel is off. Also, when we're doing pottery on the wheel, generally, you're going to be going faster towards the beginning, and the closer you get towards the end, the closer you get towards finish, the slower you're going to be going. And clay is very much like people. It's about 70 to 75% water, and it responds much better to being guided than it responds to being forced. People who are good massage therapists and teachers tend to be very good at working with clay because they already know that instead of trying to force it into what you want it to do, you don't really push it and pull it. You caress it into being. And it works much better when you have it doing what it wants to do rather than trying to force it around. So go with the natural feeling of the clay. We always need water. You don't want too much water. Dipping your hands in will be enough. A lot of the times I see beginners take an entire sponge and squeeze a whole bunch of water onto it. Unnecessary. All you need is enough water so you're not slipping. Now always have your elbows braced. You can brace them on your knees. You can brace your elbows on the sides of your splash pan here. In my case, since I'm standing, I'm going to brace my elbows against my ribs. And when you're centering a lump of clay this size, you butterfly your hand like this. And you can feel right in the center, sort of like the spoke in the wheel, where nothing will be moving at all. And then around, you can feel it kind of bumping against your hand. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to butterfly my hand, I'm going to lean in, and I'm leaning in towards the center of the wheel. And I'm putting a little bit of pressure from the sides, a little bit of pressure from the top. And they have to be about 50-50. Because if you do too much pressure from the sides, I'm going to show you what happens. It'll start to grow tall. If you do too much pressure from the top, it'll start to make a pancake. Now, optimally, what we want is sort of a hockey puck shape, about as tall as it is wide. See how it's lumping around like that? That means it's not centered. Sometimes people get to this stage and they stop their wheel and they see that it looks smooth. Smooth is not the same as centered. Centered means every bit of clay is the same equal distance from the center. If you're not sure if you're centered, take a tool, hold it up to the side. See how it's moving and bumping like that? It means it's not centered. If it stays perfectly still, like a needle on a record, that's when you've got it centered. Since we don't have it centered yet, I'm going to go back in. It's getting a little bit low. I'm going to press in from the side, lift it back up, making sure we don't close a dimple into the top, because that can become an air bubble. We already know about those. And then pressing down from the top. Now you know it's truly centered. If we take our pin tool, not moving at all. This is when you know that you're ready to throw a form. It's a very good idea to already know when you start whether you'd like to make a bowl or a mug or a tall vase. In this case, I'm going to throw a basic cylinder. Now that we've centered, I take those same thumbs that we butterflied, and I find the part that's not moving at all. Press straight down, not all the way to the bottom. Then you'll have a planter with a hole in the middle. And we open it up a little bit wider. Let's say I go a little too fast. See how it's got a little wobble in it now? I put that there on purpose. But sometimes you'll get a little wobble at this stage. Now, if you need to recenter after you've already opened your clay, that's not a big tragedy. All you do is you take a nice flat sponge like that. Take your left hand like this, support the wall at the bottom, take your sponge in the other hand, and while you're squeezing, compress with your top hand. And you can recenter that wall pretty easily. Now I know I've already showed you before how to center with a lump of clay, but let's say, for example, you were to stop your wheel and you lean over and you bump it. Oops. Looks pretty messed up, right? Well, you can use that technique with the sponge. And even fix something as bad as that. Look at that. Now today's lesson is just on centering, but just to show you from start to finish, I'm going to continue this cylinder to show you how tall of a form you can make with just 2 fistfuls of clay. Remember, we slow down as we get closer to finished. There we go. Now, one thing that I really advise for you to do, especially when you're a beginner and even when doing it for a very long time, is to check your technique by taking your pieces and slicing them in half. This is going to show you a lot. It's going to show you that, first of all, I could have done a little bit more work down here and thinned this out. See how it's thinner up there than it is down here? So there's a little bit of work to be done there. Shows me I've got a pretty good width in the bottom. And it shows me that all my throwing lines are about the same distance apart, which means I'm moving at the right speed for the wheel. Just like growth rings on a tree, you want to have them be pretty equal, and that's when you know you're doing it right. Well, I'm going to wedge this back up and use it another day. Until then, thank you for joining me. See you next time.